Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is I, Christian Moe, for AutoTalk.com. It is time for another car review. This week we are in the 2015 Hyundai Genesis sedan.
Visually, the second generation Genesis is miles ahead of its older sibling. The new Fluidic Sculpture 2.0 design language brings a cleaner and more modern feel to the car. The upright grille and increased headlights with the LED accents work perfectly with the new squared-off profile. Around back, we have new tail lights that have an interesting internal element design, and the dual exhaust adds a sporty flair. The 18-inch alloy wheels, along with the winged Genesis badge on the nose and various silver highlights, make the exterior look more luxurious than the price tag would suggest. Of course, the 2015 Genesis needs more than a pretty face to succeed in this market.
Of course, being a luxury car, the inside is extremely important, even more so than the outside. So let's take a look at what Hyundai has done to make this thing equal to its various peers. So for starters, I have this beautiful wood here on the dash and here on the door panel, and it's trimmed by this nice metal all the way around. And that is real wood and real metal. And then up here on top of my dash, I have real leather. Steering wheel is real leather. I have these nice seats that are real leather. Nice dark through black with this nice gray little piping. Looks really good. Here on the bottom of the center console, I've got this textured plastic that feels really nice and heavy duty, and it's flanked by leather on both sides. My shift boot is leather, knob is real metal, and I've got piano black across the top. Like, all that sort of stuff looks and feels real nice. I even have that great winged Genesis logo right here in the center of the steering wheel. It sort of does feel very luxury. Hyundai's gotten really good about their interiors lately, and this one is top notch. As far as the way everything looks and feels and fits, this is basically Lexus quality interior. This is BMW quality interior. Like, it is great. All the switches feel good. Everything that you want to fiddle with and touch feels nice. The only spot where there's any sort of cheapness is this little bit of plastic right around our LCD screen feels kind of cheap. And if you ever reach up into the center console and turn on the wipers, if you ever reach up into the center console, the trim plastic up there around the gauges is a little flimsy and gross, but really, who's going to be reaching up here and doing that? Of course, inside I have this big, beautiful panoramic sunroof. Goes from the back seats all the way to the front seats, and has a beautiful little split like a barn door screen for it. For back seat passengers, we have manual sunshades on the side. I've got a power sunshade. There it is up here at the front, so I can take sunshade up or down in the back. Super handy. I love that button. I just sit in traffic and play with it. Like, all that sort of stuff feels good. These seats, very comfortable. I've got like 1,000 way power seats here. I've got power sliding bolster, power up and down. I have power lumbar that's high and low. I have power actual like side bolsters. So like, it'll hold you in the seat a little bit better. The seats are heated and cooled. The steering wheel is heated. I've got nice paddle shifters here that have a little bit of metal on the front, but they're mostly plastic. They do have nice rubber grips on the back. Like, all that sort of stuff is just good. Like, Hyundai's done a really good job of nailing that sort of luxury feel. And I mean, this car has tons of options. Like I said, I've got the sunroof and the ventilated seats. This leather is an extra option. Leather is called Ultra Leather. It's super soft. It's really nice. I've got a heads-up display. I've got fancy smart cruise control, and I've got a backup camera, and I've got radar-guided cruise, and I have anti-crash detection, and I have lane departure, and I have the little lane assistant, so that if I start to go out of line, it'll actually pull the car in line for you. You can actually let go of the steering wheel, and it'll drive for like 100 yards. It's wild and nuts. Of course, I've got navigation. I have a ridiculously awesome cruise or stereo system in here. It is by a company called Lexicon, and it is 17 speakers. So I have 17 speakers. And just right here, so I've got like a big one here in the door, a little one here in the door, I've got a little one up on the dash, I've got a big center one. So it's like, there's 3 there, and then 1 there, so that's 7 just right here. And to be honest, there could be 2 in this big mesh panel here on the door. Like, there's just speakers everywhere, and it actually sounds really good. Hyundai's little system we have up here actually works okay. Hit the little home button, takes you to a main home button, but if you don't want to hit home, there's a button for everything. So I've got Sirius XM radio up front, media up front, map, climate control, all of it, single button, pulls right up. I have knobs for adjusting the temperature of my climate control, which is awesome. I have knobs for adjusting the tuning on the stereo, knobs for volume, and then everything is mimicked here on the steering wheel, and they're all easy to use and right where I expect them to be. All that sort of stuff is laid out great. In fact, I mean, from an interior standpoint, there's like no reason I see this being any worse than any other competitor. Like, it's top notch. And the space in this thing is massive. So the interior of this car is 123 cubic feet, which is more than the CTS. It's more than the Lexus GS, it's more than the Infiniti M, it's more than the 5 Series, it's more than the E-Class. It's like, those are the 5 huge names in the luxury sedan market, and this has more interior space than all of those. And the back seats are super comfy. They all have headrests. Again, I mentioned we've got the little blinds on the side and on the back. Those back seats are heated. They have their own ventilation control back here that you can fiddle with. So like, all that sort of stuff is good. It's perfect. It's just, Hyundai's done a really, really good job with the interior. But no luxury sedan would be complete without a drivetrain, without the way it drives. So why don't we take this thing for a spin, and we'll figure out if it's really worth the money that Hyundai wants for this. So I am in the Hyundai Genesis sedan, and they do sell this machine with a big honkin' 5-liter V8. I don't have that one. In fact, I have the base level 3.8-liter V6, but that's not a bad thing. This is a pretty powerful V6, and I have their fancy new H-Track all-wheel drive system. So, driving this thing. Well, first off, like I said, I've got that engine up front. 3.8-liter V6 makes 311 horsepower, 293 pounds of torque. So that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it's actually better than a lot of the competitors. That is a bigger engine than you get in the Lexus GS 350. That is a more powerful engine than you get in the Mercedes-Benz E350, and that is also more powerful than BMW's turbocharged straight 6 in the 535i. Hyundai does like to point out that is also more than the base engine you get in the A6 or the CTS, but both of those are 2-liter turbo 4s, so I'm not so sure how I feel about this. Has more power than a 4-cylinder. Well, it should, it's a V6. Anyways, that is mated to an 8-speed automatic, and of course, like I said, the H-Track all-wheel drive system. Now, the all-wheel drive system is sort of tuned in a way that's supposed to be handling enhancing, not just foul weather enhancing. And to be fair, it's okay. I do have a little drive mode button here so I can put it in sport mode, and when you do that, it sort of sends more power to the rear to give this machine kind of a rear-wheel drive feel, and it works all right, but it's not great. My biggest problem with this car is the suspension tuning. So I don't like the way a lot of Lexus cars drive because they're too soft, and they just sort of make me feel queasy when I drive them on a back road like this. And then you have the other end of the scale where BMW sits, and it's a very stiff ride, very handling oriented. And the suspension on this sits sort of in the middle, and I just can't quite figure out what they're going for. Like, it's sporty enough that you can beat on this thing without really worrying about crashing, but at the same time, it's soft enough that eventually, while you're beating on it, you'll kind of start to get queasy. So it's this weird sort of middle ground that I assume a lot of people are looking for. I'm just not one of them, and so I'm sort of meh on the whole thing. But if you decide that driving around like a hooligan on a back road at 60 miles an hour is not your kind of thing, it's not your cup of tea, well, that's fine. And that's where this thing really comes into its own. So during my testing with this thing, I took it up to Lexington, Kentucky, which is about 240 miles from my house. So nice long highway cruise there, nice long highway cruise back. And that is when I really started to get this car. So if we take it out of sport mode, put it back into normal. There is an eco mode if you want to, but eco mode is evil, don't do that. So put it back in normal mode, and you just sort of waft along, and that suspension really sort of makes sense. Because again, it's just soft enough to soak up a lot of the bumps in the road, but not so stiff that you're just sort of wallowing around on nothing. So between here and Lexington, you have to make a couple of mountain passes on the interstate, and so there's some pretty high speed turns and stuff through some of these corners, and the car never feels wayward or wallowy. It just sort of point the wheel, and the car does its business, and you continue on with life. It works really well. So it's not a back road bomber, but it is a really good highway cruiser. That also brings me to another thing I love about the cabin besides the comfortable seats, is it's actually really quiet in here. Not quite Lexus quiet, it's not that level, but it is really, really close. I can just sit here, I can talk very quietly, and you can still hear me. It's just sort of nice. You don't get a lot of harshness, like there's not a lot of tire noise, there's not a lot of wind noise, there's not a lot of drone from the all-wheel drive system, which is a problem you can get in a lot of cars. You just sort of get a little bit of noise from all those areas, and it just creates this nice little background white noise, and it's much quieter than you expect. You're like, hey, good job, Hyundai. Of course, like I mentioned earlier, in the interior, I have all these fancy safety features. I've got radar-guided cruise control, and I've got the fancy lane keep assist that will like keep me in the lanes if I'm not paying enough attention or whatever. All those systems work great. I do have to say that the lane keep assist was a little aggressive at first until I found out that there's two settings. There's a before I cross the line setting and an after I cross the line setting. So if you have the before I cross the line setting, the car keeps track of the lines in the road, radar camera, all that sort of stuff. And before you actually get to the line, it'll try and bounce you back in. So if you're on a very narrow road, it feels like you're constantly fighting the car the whole time because the car's trying to keep you away from the lines. If you set it to after I cross the line, the car will wait until you get right to the line with the wheel before moving you in, and it makes the system much more bearable to have on. I did still find myself mostly just turning it off, but for that really long highway drive, it made it great. Again, you've got radar guided cruise control, so you can set that. If somebody ahead of you is going a little bit slower or slows down, it'll slow down the car for you. It will actually bring the car to a stop as long as you're not going over a certain speed. And all that sort of stuff works good. I did a little bit of testing with that, which is terrifying, by the way, to have somebody stop in front of you and just hope the car will stop. But it does. The car will stop itself. So yeah, it just sort of works really great on those long drives. And I mentioned earlier, I've got that 17 speaker stereo. Sounds sublime. In a cabin this quiet, you don't ever have to turn it up very loud. The system goes to at least 40. I think it's 40 or 45. I never had it up above 12 or 15 usually. That was more than loud enough for me to hear and enjoy my music, even though I was going 65 or 70 miles an hour on the interstate. It was just wonderful. Like, that's sort of how I feel about this car. Like, it is just kind of wonderful. I wish it was better to drive. Like, I know that I fall on the enthusiast side of the spectrum and I want a car that's more sporty than it is comfortable, but this suspension still bothers me, especially here in East Tennessee where I live. Lots of really windy roads everywhere you go, and it's just, I get myself car sick. I get motion sick, and with this body roll and this, it just makes me feel not good. But for a lot of people, again, I can see how this would work. If I just had to make an interstate drive every day, this would be amazing. But then we get to the pricing side of things. So the price on this machine is $40,000 for a base one. This one, with all of the options, gizmos, and gadgets that I have in it, is $52,450. Like I said, that's all the fancy safety equipment, that's the heads-up display, that's the radar cruise control, that's the fancy leather seats that are ventilated, all that, navigation, you name it. Every option here, including this gigantic sunroof, $52,450. If you wanted to get a Lexus GS with those options, you're looking at more than $57,000. If you want, now that is for an all-wheel drive GS. If you want a CTS with all-wheel drive and the 2-liter engine, because that's the one Hyundai compared this to, that's $55,000. If you get the V6, the more expensive engine, it comes closer to $60,000. So this has the interior of a Lexus or a Cadillac or a BMW, but it has the price of Kia. It has the price of a Hyundai. It has the price of those Korean brands, and it's really sort of impressive that they've been able to do that. Now, to be fair, once you're above $50,000, the $3,000 difference between the GS and this is not a lot, but the, $6,000-$7,000 difference you get moving to the V6 Cadillac, that starts to make sense. If you want a BMW that's optioned up like this, if you want a 535 X-Drive, you are looking at closer to $60,000. So you can get a $60,000 car essentially for $52,000, looks great on the outside, looks great on the inside, everything feels great. But you are sacrificing that drive. That's the big thing. And of course, you're sacrificing that badge. Hyundai can put that big, beautiful Genesis wing on the nose, but it still says Hyundai on the wheels. And it still says Hyundai on the key. Like, you know it's a Hyundai, and other people will know it's a Hyundai, and that means a lot to a lot of people. The BMW Round L is probably worth $10,000 to quite a lot of people. So if I was going to spend money on something like this, to be fair, I would probably get the GS if you want something more comfortable, or get the BMW if you want something that's better to drive. I haven't driven the newest CTS yet, so I'm going to leave it out of the competition for the moment. So it is $52,000 worth of car, and it is definitely worth every penny of that. But if you choose this over one of the other competitors, you're gonna give up some of that driving ability. So you just have to sort of make that up and figure out if that's what you really want. Still though, this is a hell of a deal. It's a hell of a car. I've been really impressed with it. Like I said, handling is better than I expected it to be. Power is great. The all-wheel drive system works great. Even when it's in sport mode, it's kind of fun. Super quiet, super comfy. There are worse ways you could spend $52,000 if you wanted a luxury sedan. So once again, thank you guys for tuning in. I am Christian Moe. This has been a review for AutoTalk.com. If you like what we're doing, please let us know. Give us a thumbs up and a comment saying all the great things we did. If you don't like what we're doing, please give me a thumbs down and put in the comments what you like, or what that we didn't do what didn't we do that you liked. There we go. And we're going to try and make these better for you. But the only way we can get them better is if you let us know what to improve. So thank you for watching. I hope to see you guys next week when we'll have another driving car review. Until then, stay safe out there, guys.